sure, micro, small and medium enterprises undoubtedly form the backbone of the Indian economy. In fact, this sector is the large employment generator, the largest after agriculture, and employs over 11 crore people. It is also in trouble. While there has been some recovery from GST and demonetization, a lack of credit and red tape has hit the sector, as has the slowdown. An RBI panel has in fact suggested funds of up to 15,000 crores be created by the government to help along MSMEs. So what have the government initiatives been so far, and have they worked? What more can be done? Joining in now to speak about this are Ashok Sehgal, CII National MSME Council, and Archana Garodia Gupta, Chair of the FICCI MSME Committee. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for speaking with us today on the show. Mr. Sehgal, let me begin by your first comments on what the RBI panel has recommended: a 5,000 crore rupee fund to help MSMEs which are stuck with NPAs and in a debt crisis, and another 1,000 crores really for innovation. One doesn't know if this suggestion will actually materialize, but do you think it's crucial to what MSMEs need right now, funding?
I think both the points you've mentioned are very, very vital for the MSMEs. Talking on the relief they get from the 5,000 crore funding, it can replace the lack of funding which is now happening in the NBFC sector, because NBFCs have been very useful to MSMEs in stepping in where bank procedures were slow in releasing funds, and also partly because the MSMEs felt more comfortable dealing in a more informal manner. The NBFCs have been a large source of funds, and the government has correctly recognized that the lack of funds flow from the NBFCs needs to be offset, and they have provided this funds. I'm sure that will be extremely useful to the NBFCs in continuing to do business and grow and live up to the expectations both in the Employment and Growth Fund in which the government seems to have put its faith. Coming to the second point on innovation, I think that is something which also is must for the MSMEs, perhaps a little more for the small and medium enterprises, but along with other proposals for the government to redefine MSMEs in a different way and enable them to grow to larger size, the innovation and improvement and modernization is a very, very vital part of that. So I think taken together with the new definition which is being proposed, this availability of funding will definitely enable MSMEs to modernize, to grow technologically, and provide better services both in the domestic sector and perhaps equally importantly in the export sector.
Okay, let me come to you, Ms. Archana Gupta. According to you, and let me break this into two parts. Number one, what are the key areas that are plaguing MSMEs today, and have the government initiatives been enough so far?
So according to me, the two major issues for MSMEs, one is of course funding, and the second is the compliance load. So coming to the first part, when you're looking at funding, currently MSMEs are serviced by banks and they are serviced by NBFCs. NBFCs are going through a crisis, and they in about 5-6 years ago, the government had removed them from the priority sector lending to MSMEs. So that has reduced funds flow to the NBFCs. This should be restored. NBFC should be under priority sector lending, and that will help, because NBFCs essentially will then function as an arm of the bank to reach out to the MSMEs, because they can deal in a more detailed and informal manner with the MSMEs. The second issue is that if you analyze it, most banks and NBFCs are lending against 100% collateral. If you are lending against 100% collateral, you are essentially not giving any money to that MSME for its business, because basically if you take property worth 100% of the loan value that you've extended, you're only funding the property, right? The MSME has got no money to carry on its business. So an MSME which wants to grow does not get any funds from the bank to grow. At the maximum, it will invest its profits into property and get the bank to refund that property investment. For that, we keep talking about collateral free loans, right? And the government has a CGTMSE and it has extended the limit of collateral free loans to about 2 crores. The problem is that and also extended NBFCs within the purview of this loan. The problem is that no bank or NBFC wants to lend under this scheme. So the reason they don't want to lend is that one is that you can only apply for government to refund a guarantee after 18 months.
Yeah.
No bank is willing to take that hit in its balance sheet. So one of the suggestions we at FICCI have is to reduce that waiting period from 18 months to about 6 months. The second is that they have capped the interest an NBFC can charge under this scheme. So that spread is then not enough for the NBFC to lend under the collateral free scheme. So this interest cap should also be removed. And the third is that there is an bank managers seem to be frozen, they'd rather not lend than they are so worried about NPAs.
Yeah.
Now the thing is the NPAs are not happening in the MSME sector to that extent as they are happening in the larger sector, but we are receiving the fallout of it.
Yeah, I see Mr.
So
Sehgal
we have
nodding
to
along.
figure out
Yes.
if we have to create a
Yes, no, I just saw Mr. Sehgal nodding along in agreement to the points you were making.
If we have to create 100 million new jobs.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. MSMEs,
Okay, wonderful. So if we
MSMEs
have
are
to
the
create
backbone of
100
employment.
million new jobs.
Yeah.
Yes, and for 100 million
Yes,
new jobs,
I think,
you need to fund the sector.
Okay.
The second thing the
One
government
minute,
needs
Ms.
to
Gupta.
look at when they are funding.
One minute, Ms. Gupta. Before we come,
that-
1 minute, ma'am. Before we come to the second point, I
Sure.
just want Mr. Sehgal to come in on the points that he wants to corroborate. You've spoken about the problem of funding, and very correctly, you've talked about how the banking and the banking sector and NBFCs are right now scared. Let's put it simply, they're scared, they're very hesitant to give out loans. There is a credit crunch everywhere. So where is this 15,000 crore fund going to come from? Is it going to be feasible? But you had some points to add as well, Mr. Sehgal.
Yes, you see, one of the points which has been mentioned in the UK Sinha report is something we have been complaining about, both FICCI and CII and others, is that the 59-minute loan sanction program announced by the Prime Minister about 8 months ago worked very well in obtaining sanction of the loan within 59 minutes, but the disbursement was far, far slower. And some kind of a straw vote we took about 4 or 5 months ago was that only about 10% of the sanctioned loans were actually disbursed after about 30 days. Now, one of the points which has been mentioned in press reports is that it has been recommended that the RBI will monitor this and take a report, and they have set a target of 7 to 10 days for disbursing the sanctioned loans. I think that is a very, very big step forward. It will stop the banks from sitting on loan applications after they've sanctioned them, and will speed up the disbursement, and I hope that that will allow them to pick up a lot of the funds which are being made available to them and actually move ahead. And I think that 59-minute loan scheme is very good for 2 points. It asks for the income tax returns of the party applying for the loan, and it asks for the GSTN returns. So now the bank is in a position to evaluate the profitability and turnover of the business rather than relying only on the collateral which Archana ji has mentioned. So I think that would hopefully bring about a very big change in thinking in the banks and get them to work on more logical and numerical grounds rather than subjective grounds or on irrelevant grounds like collateral.
Ms. Gupta, apart from the points that you want to make, what are the problems apart from funding? Also, let's laser focus on what can be done. We're awaiting a big budget, the first full budget of this term of the Modi government. Where do you think the focus needs to be for the finance minister?
So the other issue that I want to bring up, and this is something which I'm talking on the lines of a major structural reform, because we need to reboot this economy. Things are frozen in the last couple of years for the MSME. You know, the compliance, if you look at an MSME entrepreneur, he doesn't have skilled labor and skilled accounting labor available to him. So the compliance framework that should be made for an MSME should have maximum, maybe you should have one identifier for the person, which is the Aadhaar, and maybe one identifier for the company, which is the GST, and all other identifiers, all other reports, why do you need a PAN number? Why do you need an import-export number? Why do you need to file 3 returns a month for GST? A government has to free up the entrepreneur's time, and this would be in line with the practices in most of the developed countries. We need to severely shrink and remove compliances, because more and more our time is being taken up by compliances. GST, the idea of GST is a very good step, and it has facilitated interstate dealings, but the paperwork involved in it has mushroomed. So what is really required in this budget is to you have to look at, you want 10 million new entrepreneurs. If you want 10 million new entrepreneurs, the compliance has to be something that maybe a 12th class pass can do easily. This is a view that the government should take in terms of designing the compliance. There is, of course, sometimes you get a choice between a lot of compliance and growth. I think if you make the compliance easier, far more people would enter into the field, and it would free up the time of the current entrepreneur who doesn't really have the resources. It's his personal time which then goes into compliance.
No, so a very important point on red tape. So if I narrow it down, lack of credit or credit squeeze and red tape, two key problems that the MSMEs face. Mr. Sehgal, just your very quick take on what should be the focus for the government in the upcoming budget and how they can address this sector, which is a huge employment generator in the budget.
Right. I think partly taking off from what Archana ji said, simplification of compliance procedures would facilitate more MSMEs and enable them to come into the formal sector. And I think that is really the gain we are looking for, because a lot of the informal sector, particularly at the micro level, they need to be really, really simplified. And I wish the budget would work towards protecting the micro sector from compliance requirements to the maximum extent possible. The small and medium, I think, are a little more capable of dealing with some of the requirements. And certainly the increased compliance also generates a certain amount of data gathering which within the company itself, which can be utilized and leveraged. And at the same time, I would also like to compliment the government that my own experience is that as far as the permissions and licenses and renewals of things like Pollution and Factory and Labours Act, a lot of it has been made online. And it happens automatically, and it is monitored that there are no unnecessary delays. And I think that would help in simplifying the compliance end. And once people see that it's not difficult to comply, I think they will come forward and into the formal sector and become part of the formal economy, which will help take the SME sector forward. So although this is not a financial thing, it is certainly a procedural thing, which I hope the budget also addresses in perhaps, again, increasing the size to which the exemptions, small units being given exemptions, and the medium enterprise being allowed to grow larger.
Absolutely. I want to thank both of you for joining us on the India Development Debate this evening. Of course, our focus on the budget, July 5th, the big date when we will see what reforms process Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister, brings to the table. Thank you so much for joining us. But before we go, this evening, we have not forgotten our commitment to solving India's water crisis. We've been asking you for feedback. We want you to reach out to us, tell us what you think and how big this crisis has become. Just an example of how this is catching the world's attention. Hollywood star Leonardo DiCaprio, who is known to adopt various causes around the world, has also taken note of the crisis in Chennai, putting out on his Instagram account, in fact, a picture posted by the BBC about a completely dry well and a city without water in Chennai. Well, he picks the top causes, and it may be a cause that is in fashion, but it's you and me who will suffer if we don't wake up now. So please do get involved. And thank you for watching.